What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the Just Gonna Say It podcast on Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us today and talking about guitar stuff. Today, we're going to talk about the future because, according to yesterday's video, a bunch of people are scared of it. I don't know why. But we're going to talk about that today, and I want to get your thoughts on it as well. Do me a favor and hit the like button and the subscribe button if you are into guitar stuff, because that's what we do here on this channel. This is an ad-free podcast, so if you want to support the channel, you are welcome to use the super chat if you like, or you can just listen and like and share and do those free things, or you can go to DylanTalksTone.com and buy pickups and stuff, because that's what we really do. That's what our real job is. So if you have questions, guitar questions, you can put them in the chat. We're just going to talk about a bunch of stuff today, having to do with kind of yesterday's video. So yesterday's video was all about trends in 2025 that I kind of think are things that are basically unavoidable, right? There's a lot of things that people don't like, but I don't know that it matters, right? Like I think, for example, the fact that digital amp modeling is kind of taking over. It's happening. Like it's a reality, right? The fact that AI is going to be a part of music production from now on. You know, it is just happening. It's a reality. So, kind of thinking about what that means. And are we afraid of it? There's nothing to fear except practicing on the gear you have. Yeah, that's funny. Exactly. What's going on, Chris? So yeah, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. We're gonna go over some of the comments from yesterday's video because there's some really funny ones actually. And I want to get your thoughts on it too. I asked yesterday for the fifth thing on that video, what guitar gear trends do you see happening in 2025 that we may not have talked about? So put that in the comments today, and let's talk about it. I think it's a good one. I'm trying to get to my comment section on that video. Do you think the digital modeling guitar like the Variax will make a comeback? They never really had a heyday, but still curious about your thoughts. I think this is my opinion on that. I think anything that you have to actually touch to make sound, or to make music, to the actual interaction point, is gonna always be, in my opinion, the last thing to go. So what I mean by that is once our signal becomes electricity, right, we don't touch it anymore. We can affect it, and we need to make sure that it's still connected to us. But the speed of light is the speed of light. And, you could say in the old days that modeling stuff, there was latency and all that, but there just isn't anymore. You know what I mean? It's just, they've got that pretty well sorted. But anything that you actually touch is always going to be a thing, in my opinion. So, okay, even for example, the mixer that I'm using now, I have the choice to use the touchscreen to make level adjustments for my headphones, for example, or I could assign a knob to do it. I'm always going to assign a knob. You know what I mean? Like it, in my car, well, let's see. This car has, my latest car has a bunch of it's basic, almost all touchscreen. And I kind of miss having, like a knob to turn the AC on. Now I have a touchscreen for that. I have a knob. I have a touchscreen to turn the heated seats on instead of a switch that you just click 3 times, right? When you start to take away the tactile feel of something, I think that is going to be, to me, that's the thing that I want to hang on to the longest. I think anything after it's electricity, I don't care. If it's like, the amps, the pedals, if a pedal is digital versus analog, I don't really care about that. If the amp is digital versus analog, I don't really care about that. As long as it's good, I don't really care about that. But if you're going to take the tactile feel away of a guitar, then I don't know that I want that. Get your thoughts in, and everybody who's in the comments talking about this. We got a super chat from Tim. He said, good day from Toners from Tasmania. Thank you, Tim, for the super chat. I appreciate that. With digital becoming more and more attainable, it's definitely not going to stop being part of the conversation, but I think there's more ebb and flow for popular gear, digital or analog. Yeah, I think so too. I don't think that it's, and I think people forget that when we have these conversations, we're not saying that tomorrow there's not going to be anything analog left, because that's not really true, but I do think that it's going to be more of a collecting sort of thing, if that makes sense. Like, there's all kinds of old stuff that you don't really have a reason to own anymore, but because it's cool, you still own it. If you can think of something like that, get in the comments and say, obviously I use fountain pens to write, I have an iPad with an Apple Pencil, but I would much rather, if I'm going to make a note real quick, I would much rather use an old fashioned pen. And I think there's going to be a lot of that stuff. So I'm not scared about it going away. I'm not scared about any of it going away. What I'm curious about is how people, and I'm not even scared of the future of it, of newer technology getting here. I'm not at all. I think it's awesome. I think all of it is awesome. I'm curious on what y'all's thoughts are, though. It's hard for me to bond with a touchscreen. Yeah, dude, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that anything touchscreen is harder. And then we've heard Leslie talk about it on the live streams on Thursdays that when it comes to accessibility, if you have, if you don't have really good eyesight, or if you don't have, there's other reasons that you would want it also. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Dang it! Why won't this give me just my comments from? Okay, here we go. So I do know that I'm kind of going through some of these comments, and a lot of folks are talking about, well, I'm pretty young for, there's this guy's like 28, and he said he's kind of a tube snob, and but he also says that the thing he likes the best about modern modelers is that they sound very studio. For a church musician, the congregants want that studio sound, and the modern pedal amps can do that for you. So, because he was talking about using a United Audio deal. So yes, that's really cool. Is when you have, and this is an interesting thing too. From the listening, so we are all talking about stuff as a player, right? So if I'm playing guitar, I want that interaction, I want that feeling, I want that, I want to do it myself, right? I don't want it done for me. I don't want a automatic driving amp or an automatic driving guitar, right? Like, I want to do it myself. But from the listening perspective, it's completely different. And I think as guitar players, we forget that. So let's talk about that for a second. The music that we are trying to duplicate with our guitars is recorded music most of the time, which is not recorded the same way we are able to play it. So as a listener, as somebody who, like, even if you don't know much about music, you might know if it's right or wrong, though. You might know if it sounds good or if it doesn't. And so having stuff that will give you like a good studio sound makes sense, because that's what most people hear. Most people hear studio sound because they're listening to records. They're listening to, recorded music. It's not typically, and there will be a lot of people that'll tell you, especially folks that, just normal consumers of music, will tell you that they would actually prefer the experience of live music aside. They would actually prefer the sound of pre-recorded music because it's cleaner, because it's easier to understand, because it's more consistent, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Let's see. Next person. I've always been an amp and pedal board guy, but when I stopped gigging, I sold my tube amps because I live in an apartment and I just can't play loud. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, it's exactly true. The Boss plug out needs more serious reviewing. Take different scenarios different guitar players usually have and put it to the test. Okay, so put it in different signal chains, put it in different stuff. Here's what I think about the Boss plug out deal. I think people are taking it too serious. I think people are thinking it's something it's not. What I think that thing is a very cool nostalgia piece that gives you all of the old pedals in one place. It's sort of like it's all of the Happy Meals. It's all the Happy Meal toys in one box. That's all it is. It's not a serious, I don't want to say it's not serious because it's good. It sounds great. But people are thinking that it is this serious performing, does all this stuff, and that's not what it is. It's just not what it is. I agree with Robert. You can't deny the impact of the new tech, but I also can't deny the usefulness of more parameters. Yes, unless you, like he says, unless you get parameter paralysis. I'm not scared. I just want it simple. Once the learning curve is done, it can be pretty simple. Push a button and there you are. This is true. Very true. Yeah. I think anymore, if I'm using my Kemper, it takes you, so let's say, I would say it would take you, let's say maybe 2 weeks. So let's say you bought a Kemper or you bought a Line 6 Helix and you've never used them before. To me, the easiest way is to just go to you have to understand how the thing works. So you have to like read the manual and know what the buttons do. So it might take a weekend of that. You know what I mean? Like learning what the buttons do and how to adjust parameters and, actually what the buttons do. But when it comes to making a sound that's good, that's a lot less to do with the gear, and it's more to do with your knowledge of how to make good tone, because it can do it. You have to understand how to do it, though. But it's just like any other amp. It's just like any other thing. Preamp, power amp, EQ, cut, boost, drive, not drive, compression. It's all the same stuff. It's all exactly the same. It just depends on, each model has, obviously the UI is different. So it makes it, the fact that we have to say the words UI, user interface, is indicative of the whole thing, right? Instead of just having knobs on it. That's why I like my Princeton Tone Master, because it's just an amp. But most of this stuff, once you understand what the knobs do and what the buttons do, then you can go ahead and set up a sound that you like. And once you have that sound, and I think there's a few of you in the comments that'll agree with me, that once you have a few sounds that you like, 2 or 3 or 4, that then you can just plug in and pick a sound and it'll be awesome. And you don't really have to fiddle that much. And then the opposite can be true, where you're kind of like, Well, it's so simple that I kind of like fiddling around. And then you can kind of dig deeper. But I wonder how many other guitarists will come to the realization Rhett Shull did when he played that Yamaha battery powered thing. It's attainable tone for any situation. I agree. I 100% agree. I think too that people are chasing. I don't want to be mean about this. People are chasing tone that's better than them, right? So what I mean by that is you listen to a Led Zeppelin record and you're chasing that sound. Well, you're never going to get there. You just aren't. I'm not. You're not. We just aren't. There's very few people that are. So, or, that I want this tone on this particular guitar sound on this particular record. Well, you're just never going to get there. You're not that good. Okay. I'm not that good. Most of us aren't that good. We just play guitar. Like we're just guitar players. We just like this stuff. It's cool. So that means that the far majority of the stuff that is available gear wise, especially on the digital side, is way better than us, which means that if we learn it, we can make it sound really, 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 really good, right? Even a positive grid Spark, right? Doesn't matter which one. The tiny, because the software is all the same. So the tiny one, the Go, the Mini, the 40, it doesn't matter. Now the 40, obviously, I'm not talking about speaker. I'm talking about like in headphones, right? Let's say in headphones. All of them doesn't matter because all the software is the same. Kemper, Line 6. I don't have a whole lot of experience with Head Rush, but a lot of people really like them. Tonex for sure. You can get tone. When I say tone, I mean like tone, bro, out of any of those things from $200 to $800 or $2,000 that is so good. It's better than you. All of it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how cheap it is. Doesn't matter how expensive it is. Now, there's some stuff that's on the really inexpensive side, and some of the, there are some knockoffs of knockoffs that might not. But I'm talking about the main stuff, like, so yeah, Head Rush, Tonex. I don't know. You know that stuff. It's good. It's all really good. And if you put it in the department that it's supposed to live in, like, you're not going to play an arena with a positive grid Spark Mini, right? But it's amazing for sitting here on the couch and playing, right? Well, it's not as good as my. It doesn't matter. You're sitting on the couch playing. You know what I mean? Like you're enjoying your evening. You're not playing an arena. Spark is love-hate for me. Yeah, it's convenient. But I love my little Fender Champion with no app and no screen just as much for the simplicity of it. The Spark is always disconnecting. So don't use it that way. So here's what I would tell you about that. If you are relying on the Spark to be connected to your phone all the time, and this is the biggest objection. So let's talk about this. This is good. So one of the things that people objected to in this thing we talked about yesterday is having to have an app or anything to play. Okay. So what we should, and those of you that have this stuff, chime in and tell us your feelings on this and your experiences. Okay. So apparently Major Upgrade here says that he's having a hard time with it disconnecting all the time. What I would tell you is don't use it that way. Set your sounds up. So I'll give you an example. And this goes for a lot of this gear. If you are using it in a way that makes it to where it depends on connection, then you need to get past that point with that piece of gear. Okay. So what I mean by that is if it's a Tonex, if it's a Positive Grid, if it's a Kemper, spend the time to get your sounds the way you want them in the profiles, save them to the device, and throw the app away. Don't throw the app away because it's in your phone, but don't get it out ever. Okay. So what I do is I have 4 profiles, right? Because the Positive Grid Spark Mini has 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got the clicky knob. Okay. And I think the Spark Go, I don't use that one as much, but it has a button in it. I think you can toggle with a button. I think you can toggle through 4 profiles. So what I do is I save 4 profiles to it. And honestly, they're sort of based on 4 different guitar types, if that makes sense. So I've got them, I've got one I use with like a Strat, and I've got one that I use with, hot humbuckers, and I've got one that I use with P90s. And so there's like 4 different profiles on my Spark Mini. And then I never, ever use the app after that. If you're using the app still, and this is what I would tell most people who have a trouble with, like, I don't want a piece of gear that is tied to an app. It's not tied to an app. Your brain is tying it to an app. So get past that. Get the tones, find the tones, get them how you want them, and then don't use the app at all. If you're trying to like live switch and all that stuff, then maybe that device isn't for you. If you are trying to, use it like a pedal board, then it's possible that the Positive Grid Spark Mini or et cetera is not for you. Maybe you actually need something more in depth than that, right? But if you're just playing, hanging out on the couch and playing, and you're like, man, this thing's super annoying because it always disconnects on me, then just don't connect it. Just get your tones the way you want them and just play. That's what I would do. Let's see. I bought a Spark Go for my workshop. That's what I use mine for a lot too, actually. That's what my Go is actually used for most of the time, is in the shop, because then I can just plug guitar in. There's no warm up or anything, right? And so I use it to make sure that like my switching is correct, or like whatever wiring I'm doing is right. Let's see. Yeah, fair points. I can get my 4 favorites, plug them into the amp, and then just adjust on the amp as needed. Great idea and option. Yeah, and I think that, okay, so if you can adjust on the amp, then that means you have a Spark 40 or a Spark 2, like the bigger one, which is even less issue. That's even less of an issue. Yeah, get 4 good profiles and then just tweak a little bit as you go, and don't use the app at all. I would say the same thing with a Kemper. I would say the same thing with the Tonex. I would say the same thing with any of this stuff. Don't use the app. The plug out FX thing, get the however many effects that you want onto the pedal, and don't even plug it in anymore. Don't mess around with it. Just get what you want on the pedal and then just use it like a regular pedal. Never plug it into the app. I think when people hear that there is an app for it, they think that it has to have the app to work. 99% of this stuff, that is not the case. 99% of it, you don't have to be afraid of that. If we're talking about fear of the future and where all this stuff is going, you don't have to worry about it. And then people will say, well, lack of support, with software in the future and whatever. Well, that's always a thing. That's everything, right? That's TVs, phones, whatever. There's always firmware for all kinds of stuff. Your thermostat in your house, right? So your car, like all that stuff is going to be a thing for sure. I agree. But once it's in there, and you could play it like that forever, And the other thing is that this technology is not hot. A lot of folks will say, well, what if it needs to be repaired? Like, what if it breaks? Okay. So electronics are subject to heat. So when you amplify something, when you create a higher voltage, when you create a higher current, you create heat. Heat kills semiconductors. It kills resistors. Those are basically the 2 things that fail in electronics, right? So They'll kill semiconductors and they'll kill resistors. Capacitors used to be a thing, but not so much anymore. Technology's gotten a lot better with that. But these things don't have heat, right? A tube amp has tons of heat, right? But these things don't have heat. So like, they do, but so like a positive grid spark mini is not going to run hot, right? It's not going to run, hot. You're not going to introduce a bunch of semiconductor heat and then all of a sudden this thing's going to blow up. Chances are it's probably going to run for years and years and years and years at its 3 or 5 little watts, whatever it is. And it's never going to blow up because it's never going to overheat. Now, is the battery going to lose its ability to maintain a charge over time? Yeah, probably. Because all batteries do, right? But then there's going to be some forum somewhere and you're going to be able to get a battery on Amazon, and in a half an hour, you're going to be able to swap it out and it'll be fine. Just like anything else. I know that because right now I'm working on my dog collars have these little batteries that I got to swap out the batteries about once a year, like $20. So, or I've got these Wi-Fi enabled smoke detectors, which is the next thing I got to change batteries in. So we're going to be changing batteries and all kinds of stuff. So that's a thing, right? So you're going to have to deal with that. But that's everything. Again, that's everything. So again, it's not about this stuff failing. It's not about it blowing up. It's not about it where a tube amp will blow up. A tube amp will overheat. It creates heat to work. This digital technology does not create that much heat to work. And so therefore, I don't think you really need to worry about it. Embrace the future and enjoy the past. Exactly. Thought about getting an air step for a pedal board. Yeah, that's cool. The only thing you got to worry about there is making sure it stays connected, obviously. Let's see. Let's go through a couple of these. A lot of folks wanted to talk about the possibility of alternative materials in wood, and kind of wanted to dive into that some more. Obviously, we know that there's going to be a lot more other woods that I think with this is an easy one. This is just get out of the mindset that mahogany and alder and swamp ash and maple are the only things that you can build a guitar out of, right? Like you can build a guitar out of anything as long as it's 5 to 6 pounds and it's easily machinable and it's easily finished, and like any material will work as long as the weight and the balance and the construction feasibility is all there. Doesn't really matter what it's made of. And yeah, of course, you can go ahead and get into some kind of tone wood argument about that, but it doesn't matter if it sounds good, right? There is no argument if it sounds good. So if the guitar sounds good, it is good. Doesn't matter what it's made of. It can be made of concrete block. And if you got to figure out a way to make a concrete block that weighs 5.5 pounds or 6.5 pounds or 7 pounds, and it's in the shape of a guitar that works, it's fine. And if it sounds good, it's fine. Doesn't matter. And I think as long as we as guitar players can get over that, I think it's already happening in other countries. So of course, Australia's been on my mind a bunch because of Tim and this little guitar that he built for my family. And I've done a bunch of research on guitars from Australia, for example, and they use all kinds of wood that I've never heard of, like these trees I've never even heard of before, even with acoustic stuff. So if you go to like the Cole Clark website and look at Cole Clark acoustic guitars and look at all the wood that their guitars are made of, you've never heard of any of it before. And their guitars sound great. So it doesn't matter that it's not the big 5 types of wood. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's made of. As long as we can get there with the mentality, the physical side of it's going to follow. That's going to be easy. That's just a matter of, not worrying about it. A 6120 in carbon fiber wrapped with sparkled drum kit plastic would be really cool. Oh, totally. That would be pretty rad. That would actually be pretty rad. My Taylor is Avangall. Yes, that is a really pretty wood, right? And let's see. So Taylor uses Avangall. They use a bunch of stuff. They use a bunch of reclaimed stuff, right? Breedlove uses myrtle wood, right? That's an interesting wood. McPherson uses redwood. They use cedar. There's all kinds of, and that's what's interesting is there's a bunch of really expensive guitars that are all kinds of crazy wood. But for some reason, with electric guitars, when somebody says, I'm going to make this guitar out of poplar, then all of a sudden everybody freaks out. It's why? It doesn't matter. Or basswood. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. If it sounds good, it is good, right? The PRS Silver Sky SE in poplar, it sounds fine. The only thing with poplar is you don't really get a good natural finish with it because the wood's kind of ugly. It can be a little sort of streaky and marky, and some of the streaks will be like an avocado green almost. So if you try to put a natural finish on poplar, it can look sort of and be very plain, and in fact, not very uniform, if that makes sense. But other than that, it's fine. All you really care about is that the guitar weighs the right amount and that the balance is good and that it's relatively available. Poplar is actually, well, it depends where you get it, but it's the wood that they use, I think, is either cottonwood or tulip tree. So, and that's the other thing people don't realize is there's a lot of kinds of wood that are called that wood, but it's not really that wood, right? There are 250 something different subspecies of mahogany. When you buy a mahogany guitar, especially a cheap one, it's probably not mahogany. It's probably something in the mahogany family that looks like mahogany, but it's not really, right? It's not Honduran mahogany. It's not Brazilian. It's not, it's some sub species of mahogany that looks kind of the same. Sapele is an excellent example of that, but there's way more of those. So we don't really need to worry about that much. Rosewood is an interesting one because, Major just brought up rosewood. So rosewood's an interesting one because there are a lot of subspecies of rosewood. And I think the biggest thing with rosewood is that people are very stuck on the visual of rosewood. So if you look at pale pharaoh, for example, it can be kind of orange. You can get good pieces of it. It depends where you. So good pale pharaoh looks very much like rosewood. Cheap pale pharaoh does not. So when people buy a cheap guitar with a pale pharaoh fretboard, they're like, this doesn't look like rosewood. Well, yeah, it's because you bought a cheap guitar. If you get a good one, if you get somebody who actually picks the wood properly, it will look fine. But it's really just visual when it comes to that stuff. I like my D18 and my D28 rosewood. Mahogany D18 and, oh, dude, me too. I have a D18 and a D28, and I actually have a Breedlove Premier Dreadnought. So I have, I'm with you on that. I think that you should definitely buy them. If you have not already, get a real good acoustic that's made out of that stuff, because who knows how much longer we're going to have it. Yeah, man. The Ventera 2s are some serious budget guitars. They're very good. Yeah. Did you see the new thing that just came out today or yesterday? Fender, I was just looking at these. Fender just announced or released, you can actually get them already. Hang on. I was looking at, they're about $1,500, which makes total sense. Perfect price point. The Fender American Classic. I think American Professional Classic. That's what they're calling it. And I think this is I don't want to say the entry level, but I think it kind of is the entry point into American guitars for right at $1,500 from Fender, which is really cool. It's a 9.5-inch radius fretboard. Their urethane finishes at that point. Alder bodies, maple necks, 9.5-inch radius. They've got a new pickup, whatever, for them, and they've got the 6-screw bridge. So basically, I think what it is, it's like an American Vintage 2 with urethane finish and a better fretboard radius for more people, but it's still a Strat, right? Or a Tele, which I think is really cool for $1,500. I think that's a perfect price point to be. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I use 90% Tasmanian wood, which you don't find anywhere else. That's pretty neat, man. Hang on, I'm trying to catch up. Yeah, so I think that all this is pretty easy. Let's see. How about spruce as the sounding board? Are there good replacements? Oh yeah, dude. There's all kinds of great guitars made out of stuff other than spruce. Yeah, tons of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Is a high-end PRS worth the cost for the choice from the wood library? It's way out of my price range, but personally, I think the SEs are pretty dang awesome. Yeah, I think that those guitars, okay, I think those guitars, anything expensive is just a matter, the is it worth it thing is, okay. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down to any one person, okay? So I'm going to just say this in a general statement, but I think the is it worth it question is dumb. I think it's a dumb question because the only person that can answer that is the person who is about to get their money out, right? So if I'm about to buy something and I am reaching for my wallet, I am the only person that matters who says, is this thing worth it? Because it doesn't matter to anybody else. And nobody else can make that call. So if you want a Wood Library private stock PRS for $12,000 and you think it's awesome and you want one, then buy it. And you're going to call me up and be like, yo, bro, I just bought one of these things. You want to see it? Yeah, I want to play it. That's awesome. And I'm going to be very happy for you. And I think that's going to be very cool. And another person who comes to me and says, hey, I just bought a Fender Classic Vibe for $549 and check it out. And I'm going to walk up to you and be like, holy crap, that guitar is awesome too. And I'm very happy for you. The same amount, because it is worth it to each person differently. I think the people that talk trash about other people's purchases that's just a waste of good life energy that could be used for something else. That is my opinion. I mean, yeah, I like cool stuff. Okay. But if I was to pull out something cool and show it to you before you knew how much it cost, you would be like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And then if I told you how much it cost, you'd be like, whoa, yeah, no, that's not worth it. No way. But I think it is. That's why I bought it. Sometimes it's a very intangible thing. Sometimes it's a technology. Sometimes it's a materials cost. Sometimes it's, I heard something the other day. I don't even remember where I heard it, but it was basically effort costs money, right? So any kind of effort that's put into something, whether it's time, effort, funds, anything, when you put it into something, it costs money. So for example, you take like this $2,000 PRS SE Clio thing. The effort that goes into that guitar justifies that cost in relation to the rest of the range. It's an expensive guitar to make. When you look at like Paul Reed Smith's factory, Phil just did that tour, and Phil McKnight just did that tour, and he did that whole thing and talked about all the stuff, the way they go into it and their approach. I'm like, yeah, they put effort. There is effort put into this guitar, and it shows in the product, right? But that effort costs money. That's why those guitars cost what they cost. And you could go into anything. You could go into the same amount of effort into anything. I got a pocket knife over here. I've got a whatever. It doesn't matter. Anything. And you could say there's a reason why this thing costs this much. That doesn't make it worth it to anyone. There's just a reason. So when somebody says, well, that shouldn't cost that much. Well, it doesn't. Yes, actually, it should. It should cost what it costs. That's why it costs what it costs. If something costs $1,000, something costs $1,500, something costs $2,000, there's a reason why it costs that. Well, if it's worth it to you, that's a totally different conversation that only you can have with yourself. But there's a reason, if our humbucker is $139 and then we have another one that's $159, there is a reason why there's a $20 difference between those two. It's either a parts cost or an effort cost, right? So whether you think it's worth it or not, that's a conversation you need to have with yourself. But stuff costs what it costs. Let's see. Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about this, Tim. So the little Telly has a silver wattle back and a pale Tasmanian blackwood top with a Tasmanian eucalyptus fretboard. Hang on. I got to screenshot this because I meant to ask you about this the other day. Because I'm going to look up those woods later because I have no idea about anything about Australia. So when it comes to that stuff, I've used some stuff, but, I've played some guitars with some, like I said, like the, all that. But I just spent under $3,000 for a 77 Les Paul Standard and threw a set of pickups in it. It's truly the it factor. At the end of the day, it's feel preference over hype. See, but to me, hype is a stupid word too, because I'm going to hype something that I like. I'm going to think something's awesome. It doesn't mean that I don't know. I don't like those words. I don't use those words because I think they're Keanu Reeves motorcycle. Dude, okay. Keanu Reeves motorcycles, if I do not currently have the budget for one of his bikes, but I'm telling you right now that if I tomorrow had the budget for one of his bikes, I would 100% own one. They are absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Are the PRS SE guitars at a level where they take a great setup and have good tuning? Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah, they are for sure. Yep. Also, anything can get a good setup and you can upgrade tuners and bridge or whatever if you think it needs it. So the only thing I would say in opposition to that is there are some of these more inexpensive guitars. A lot of the very inexpensive, cheap import stuff, and the ones I'm talking about, They do not have the care put into them pre-production. So the way the wood is processed, choosing the materials, like choosing the right pieces of wood, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of these more inexpensive guitars will be more unstable. They will. In fact, if you've ever been, in fact, I used to know, there used to be this store here in town. Was it here? Yeah, it was here. So there used to be a store here in town that was not a Fender dealer, but they used to buy Squiers. They used to have all these Fender Squiers. And I'm like, wait, but you're not a Fender dealer. And what I found out was there is a way, and I didn't know this, but there is a way that you can buy. They're like the ones you get on Amazon, basically. And he was stocking them in his store. But when you go and look at them, there's like different knots they're kind of like, they're not seconds, but they might as well be. And they weren't as good. They weren't as good. They weren't as stable. The necks weren't seasoned enough, like when they made them. And so a lot of these really inexpensive guitars, so your Fireflies and your Harley Bentons, all that kind of stuff, they're going to be like that. They're a lot of times. And I'm not saying everyone's going to be, but they will be very, the fairest way to say it would be they will be a lot less consistent than something more mainstream like a PRS, for example, where we've seen, and they've been very transparent about the amount of time and effort that they put into them. And of course, as you know, all of the PRS SE stuff is made in Indonesia now. So yeah, I think it's definitely a you get what you pay for thing. And I know that people want to, but I can get this cheaper one and it's just as good. I get that. I get the desire to do that. But if something is less expensive, if we go back to the earlier thing that we're talking about, effort and materials cost money. So if there's something that is $200 and it looks exactly like a thing that is $400, there is a difference. There is less effort or there is less materials or both. And if you do your research and your homework and find out, you will find that out. There will be a difference. Contrary to popular belief, this is just a money grab and this company is just trying to rip us off, blah, blah. You can't really do that and stay in business. Can't really do that and stay in business. The market will bear a certain thing for a certain price, and you it's a reality, right? The way a product is priced versus what it costs to build it is a reality. And so the people that say, well, the $2,000 PRS SE, they're just making all kind of money off of it because blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. There is more money because there is more effort or there is more cost in parts. End of story. Have you researched the Philippines brand custom shop guitars by RJ Guitars? I have not. I got a couple questions. If you got a minute, get them in there and I will try to answer them. I'd say it goes Japan and then Korea as far as quality imports, in my opinion. I think there's some generalizations there that a lot of people would make, but there are less. Just because it comes from Korea doesn't make it better than in Indonesia. That can't be. I mean, I've seen some terrible stuff come out of world music. For example, world music in Korea. One of their in my opinion, big time faults. A lot of their guitars that I've seen come out of there are very heavy. which means that they're either wet or they're not selecting choice pieces. So that's a thing, right? For example, people buy what they want. Let them do so. There is a reason for what they bought for them. Well, yeah, sure. Or one company has employees and the cheaper one is a person operation undercutting competition. So there is some of that, but you're not going to see that it's not going to be a successful company, big name that you're going to see. If you are a person, because I've seen this, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to, but I'll give you an example from what I do know. From the pickup side of things, I can think of 2 or 3 pickup companies in the United States right now that make pickups that cost in the United States, allegedly, that cost half of what our stuff costs. The problem is that they will not be in business for very long. And if they will, they won't really ever grow because they do not have the pricing tells me that they do not have the business acumen to succeed because they have priced themselves into a situation where what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Well, if it happens, then all of a sudden you can't afford to be in business anymore. So that it's just a reality, right? Things cost what they cost because of effort and cost of parts. And if you price it for less than that because you're trying to undercut, it tells me a lot about you, and it tells me also about your product, and it also tells me that you're not going to be in business for very long. Yeah. So I don't really worry about that much. And I don't look at those. Honestly, I don't look at those companies. If somebody says, hey, this is an awesome guitar company and they're a third of what everybody else is, I just don't even look. Because where are they going to be in 10 years, 5 years, 3 years? They're just not going to be there. Let's see. I'm a tech for a band and have about 25 high-end PRS guitars that I take care of. I have cheap guitars at home, and they aren't even close to the PRS guitars. They always need a lot of work. Yeah, and that's the thing. I could give you examples of guitars that we have here that I have had here that I never, ever, 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 ever have to touch versus guitars that I have to mess with. That's really true. Yeah. Yep. Well, cool. You guys have been a fun conversation. Thanks for hanging out today and chatting about guitar stuff. I love it. I love it. Make sure you check out our channel, Dylan Talks Tone. It's all right there. If you want pickups, go to Dylan Talks Tone and buy some pickups. We're making some really neat stuff. And thanks for hanging out. We will see you in the next video.